Yeah.
than a table thing anymore.
Back with you on the Morning Brew. Welcome to our show. We're back live today. Thank Lindy's Cafe for the view out our window in downtown Albuquerque today. We took Martin Luther King Day off, so we're back live with you today. That's why Erin's wearing the Broncos dress. I was hoping you'd wear that, actually. You know, because
they're going to the big game. What?
Yeah. It's a real pleasure to welcome this gentleman sitting next to you, Erin. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a local author, but he's much more than that. He's a great New Mexican. Great resume. You've done a lot of things. In fact, he's the most interesting guy I know. So, Joe Badal.
I'll be doing beer commercials next.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, you could. Joe has turned his passions now towards being a very prolific author. Book number 7?
Be out in April.
Wow.
Out in April.
Right.
And it's a thriller.
Right.
So
people aren't aware that there's so much exciting stuff going on in New Mexico.
Yeah, we have some great authors, and we're privileged to have one of them right here on the show. So
thank you
for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about this book. It's your 7th book.
Right. The 7th book is Ultimate Betrayal, and it's a standalone thriller. And it's, as with all of my novels, it's loosely based on actual events. And in this case, the backstory is personal experiences that I had in Vietnam, but nobody really seems to want to read about Vietnam anymore. So I moved the backstory up into Afghanistan.
Oh.
And so my protagonist served in the army in Afghanistan, and then is running his own private security business in the States now. And all of a sudden, his house is blown up, and just makes no sense. He doesn't understand, and then he stumbles on the fact that the 13 other men that were in this top secret unit he served with have all been killed in the last 30 days.
Oh my gosh.
So now he's come to the conclusion he probably knows something he's not supposed to know, but he doesn't know what it is, and he doesn't know who's after him. So that's kind of how the story develops, and then the rest of the book is all about who did this, and trying to find out who it was, and getting payback.
Yeah, it sounds like a book that's kind of keeps you on your toes, like keeps you reading, like what's going to happen?
I've known Joe for many years, and this passion to be an author has been inside of you for a long time. Joe ran one of the few publicly traded companies here in Albuquerque for many years, and has a background in banking and finance. Have you always had this desire to be an author, to be a successful writer?
Yeah, Larry, it really started with reading as a kid, and what I always tell young people is, if you want to be a writer someday, you better be a reader now.
Yeah.
And so I did a huge amount of reading, and really wanted to be a writer. And I remember as a junior in high school, my father saying, "Well, what do you want to study?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a writer." And he said, quote unquote, "Dummy, you don't have any life experiences. What are you going to write about that anybody will want to read?" And then he said, "Oh, by the way, you can't make a living as a writer." And it turned out he was right on both counts. But it's a passion I've had since I was a kid, and I'm so lucky to be able to be pursuing that passion today.
Yeah, and all of your books seem to be thrillers. Is there a reason you kind of tend to write more of thriller books?
Well, it's really what I started reading as a young adult, and I started with Robert Ludlum, and I kind of fell in love with the thriller genre. But I'm actually writing a mystery right now that is about 2 female detectives on Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and that should be out in 2015, and that's my first mystery. So it's a little different. There's simplistically, the difference between a thriller and a mystery is, with a mystery, you really don't find out who the bad guy, who done it until the end. Whereas
Yeah.
with a thriller, you kind of know, but then it's a matter of trying to bring them to justice. So it's really what I like to write, the thriller genre. It's what I like to read.
Yeah. Yeah. More
What you
entertaining.
tend to do, Joe, is take headlines from the news today and place them into your books. You also take personal experiences.
Right.
There's one of his books, Evil Deeds. I hope I'm right on that.
You are.
About the time when you were stationed in the army in Greece and your own son was kidnapped.
That's right.
Oh wow.
How about that?
Wow.
And you put that in the book.
Yeah, he was just a little over 2 years old, and fortunately we got him back fairly quickly. Of course, you don't have a story if you don't let it run on a little bit in the book. But yeah, my father was right that until you have life experiences, what do you have to write about? So
Yeah.
that was not one of those life experiences I'd hoped for, but
Yeah, right.
it turned out all right, fortunately, in the end.
And the dog saved the day, right?
That's right.
The dog.
He did.
Seriously, yeah.
She did.
Yeah, that's neat.
Now, you're actually going to be having a book signing for your book coming out in April, right?
Well, we'll have several book signings. We're scheduled for a signing at Bookworks on Rio Grande, and also we'll do one at Collected Works in Santa Fe.
Oh, great.
And I'll be on a 1-month book tour around that time, just after the book comes out, and so we'll do some bookstores, do some speeches to book clubs and so forth. So.
Yeah, that's great.
You spend a lot of time in the writing community, working with other writers, and kind of really immersing yourself in the literary circles around Albuquerque. And we have a big author community around here, don't we?
We really do. It's a very fertile location, and I don't know if there's something in the water in New Mexico that causes people to want to write, or it's New Mexico that attracts people that from other places. I guess it's a matter of both. But
Sure.
we really do have some wonderfully successful and wonderfully talented writers in Albuquerque and in New Mexico.
Yep. Home of, let's see, Hillerman. I mean, wow, one of the best writers.
Yeah, and you know, his daughter Anne.
And she's become a really great writer herself.
Well,
yeah.
she actually picked up on her dad's main characters, and she's written a book called Spider-Woman's Daughter, which has been very successful, New York Times bestseller, and received a lot of acclaim. So, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person.
Yeah, it's a very supportive community. I want to ask you, one of your books, Shell Game, is about the financial crisis, especially with banks.
Right.
And it's based on a lot of true stories, if you will. Can you elaborate a little bit about that, Joe?
Well, Charter Bank in New Mexico was taken over by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and I had worked at Charter years ago, and I knew what kind of conservative lending practices the bank had, and I was incensed when the bank was taken over.
They didn't deserve it.
It made no sense.
No.
And so, and I was so angry that, you know, you need to be passionate about your writing, and anger's a passion. So I literally sat down and wrote a book more from what would happen to a borrower if all of a sudden their bank was taken over and they couldn't get their loans renewed. What would happen to that borrower and their business and so forth. And so that's kind of the core story, but it really was inspired by what happened to Charter Bank, which is, by the way, happened to a lot of community banks around the country.
Yeah, it's
And
unfortunate.
that wasn't necessarily a good thing either.
No, well, I think it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting today is in 1984, 30 years ago, there were 19,017 banks in the United States. Today, there are less than 7,000.
Really?
And so a huge number of banks have gone under, they've been acquired, and I think we're going to see a similar dynamic occurring here in the near future, because the cost of regulation is now so high. Rules that were put in place under the Dodd-Frank law for big banks have now percolated down, and they're affecting small banks, which was not the intent. So it's, I think it's going to be very difficult for small community banks that are undercapitalized to be able to survive, and I think they need to find ways to merge and or acquire other banks in order to be able to survive.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, there's a lot going on with the NSA, other crazy government events. Does any of that inspire you for another book?
Oh, yeah. In fact, my latest book, The Lone Wolf Agenda, has a lot of information in it about NSA capabilities, which, of course, I wrote that book almost 2 years ago.
Right.
So
It's prophetic.
oh my God,
Yeah.
Edward Snowden, thank you. But it's and this the next book in the Danforth saga, which will be the 5th book, which I've tentatively titled Death Ship, has a large part of the story is about NSA capabilities, and which is pretty difficult. It's good and it's bad. I mean, it's difficult to really get information because NSA is such a secret organization.
Yeah.
But it also gives you the ability to make stuff up. So it's,
that's
There
the
you
best
go.
part.
So it's,
and as a writer, you can do that.
oh yeah, that's great. Somebody asked me one time, "Why do you write fiction?" I said, "Because I can make stuff up."
Great to have you on the show today, Joe.
It's a pleasure to be
Yeah,
here.
thank
for having
you.
me.
Thank you.
you
Joe
so
Badal,
much.
everybody, local author, the 7th book coming out this spring. We want to thank Albuquerque Arts and Entertainment Magazine for bringing Joe and all the great people in this segment. You can check out Albuquerque Arts Magazine, delivered to your inbox every day. Just go to albuquerquearts.com. We'll be back. More on the Morning Brew right after this.